Another weekly wrap up. Andres, thanks for joining me.
No problem, Graham. Happy your weekly as usual.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got an interesting one this time. The 5 takeaways from the Boye 2023 Web CMS conference. Matthew McQueenie from CMS Wire sort of wrapped up and summarized the key points from this event, which there's a few interesting points actually. So run us through it, and then we'll just discuss as we go through. Please.
Yeah. So this was a conference held by Boeing Company CMS Kickoff Florida 2023 between January 17th to 18th, and it featured leaders from across the globe in the monolithic headless CMS space. And there were a couple of big takeaways. I think the first one mentioned in the article is education is paramount. And there's a quote from Matthew that says, "We may be able to expertly explain amongst each other the differences between monolithic versus headless CMS and all-in-one versus composable. But do our messages and entreaties resonate with the marketplace and customer needs? That is not as clear." So it seems like there's and I think we talk about this a lot, to be honest, like the fact that there's so many different terminologies in the space, they're continually changing. And just from being in the industry, it's easy to say, okay, yeah, I see that minor difference there is what's the change between this and that, versus composable versus headless versus whatever. But there's an overall need for that to be honed in on throughout the industry still.
Yeah, this whole education thing, it's sort of rearing its head a lot more last sort of 3 to 4 months across different events. So I listened in on a Mac Alliance sort of like roundtable discussion with some of their sort of senior leadership of Mac Alliance. Education was really big on their agenda for this year, right? 2023, they want to really focus on specifically educating the market on the differences between a composable system and a Mac system, right? So the one example you could use is like Salesforce. Salesforce has some products that are composable and they market them as composable, but the Mac Alliance is a different view, a different criteria on what is composable and what qualifies as Mac is a higher sort of criteria. So they really want to sort of educate the market about that, because as you mentioned, there's so many different buzzwords, a lot of overlap between like monolithic systems releasing new products that are like, hey, we can do the same thing, and it's from the buyer's perspective and even from the agency's perspective. Sometimes it's very chaotic. We work with different agencies, and sometimes the feeling I get is like, they're sort of caught in the middle, right? They've got experience working with some monoliths, they've got some experience working with like headless platforms, but they're just not sure what to tell their clients right now, who are sort of trying to figure out what the space is and where the future should be. Like, should they stay monolithic? Should they start to decouple everything and go headless, or go DXP route, and go to best of breed route? Again, what the quote here is saying, like, they do a good job of explaining the differences between monolithic and headless and the benefits. I think it's fairly established on what the benefits are, but there needs to be more specific messaging to enterprises who are like, knee deep in a monolith. Like, what do they do right now? And also agencies, like what should they do when enterprise clients come to them? They've got specific needs. Just saying to them, hey, go headless is just not enough, right? And also sometimes just saying, again, as this market grows, just saying, hey, we've got one headless CMS partner, we'll just funnel them into there. This kind of leads into another quote that you're gonna sort of share with us in a minute, which is like, different headless CMSs, they've got different benefits, they've got different expertise, right? They've got different experiences in different industries. So one agency having one headless CMS vendor is probably not like the ideal situation for that customer coming in the door and saying, hey, we want to go headless, and they just say, yep, we've got it already, we've got the partnership already. That's probably not, most of the time, that's probably not the best fit for them. So there's a lot of education needs to happen from multiple different angles. But yeah, let's move on to the next point.
Yeah. So another takeaway you mentioned was web CMS commoditization. What are the differences? So just some of the vendors who are at this event, you have Kendico, Content AI, Content Stack, Magnolia, Storyblock, Sanity, Optimizely, Solidev, and Brocco. I'm sure there are others that weren't mentioned in this article. And one of the activities they did was to perform what they call a CMS idle, which is a 6-minute demo of like their interfaces. And I think this is actually a really good comparison that Mafi mentioned in the article. He compared it to the number of different streaming services available. You have YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. The main goal of all of these things is all those services is to stream music. Just like the main goal of all these different CMSs is to help you manage content. So it seems as if like we're heading towards commoditization of like headless and hybrid headless and etc. And this came from Casper Rasmussen, who's president of Mac Alliance. One of the things he mentioned that it's probably easier for vendors to answer the question of what they're not rather than try to focus on what they are, because there's so many different overlapping similarities.
Yeah, a lot of messaging from like headless CMS, headless commerce vendors now are like, it's been carried over from when like headless CMS was still obviously new and emerging, but when it was very new, very emerging, it was like just being a headless CMS, just being a headless commerce platform was enough to like entice an enterprise that had been educated on it and like wanted to go down that route. But now it's like the market has grown so much. There's so many different competitors. You named a few here that were just there, and that's just like scratching the surface. We need to see more headless CMSs saying, you know what, we're the headless CMS for the education industry, higher education, or the aviation industry, or the e-commerce industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having that sort of like focus on what they are, right? And a lot of them already kind of have that focus, but they don't really present themselves that way. So you'll find many headless CMSs, if you go and look at their case studies, they're only working in like 3 to 4 industries. Like they're not working in many different industries. It's like 3 to 4, or they're very SMB focused, very startup focused, or they're very enterprise focused. There's an opportunity there for some of these players to say, you know what, we're just going to focus on this one vertical or these 3 verticals because we've already got a good foot in the door there. And why don't we just go after this market rather than trying to be this whole jack of all trades headless CMS that can serve everybody. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't serve anybody, but I feel like going into the market and saying, hey, these 3 industries or this one industry is where we excel, where we've got like 7 case studies. It's just more powerful, and again, it allows the market to sort of see a bit more clearly who's who, right? Because again, what the quote here is, "What are you not?" instead of what you are, right? And the implication there is that from a glance they all look the same, right? Mm-hmm. They all look the same from a glance, but they're all saying relatively the same stuff, and they're trying to serve the same industries, and there needs to be some differentiation going on, and this kind of plays into the education as well. But this is a really interesting point. I thought was really, really hitting nail on the head, I think. And I think headless CMS need to think deeply about this in their messaging.
Yeah, and I think one more thing that they mentioned was in the article is there needs to be more clarity of vision. And I think one way that clarity will arise is through like the second topic we're talking about today, is the value of partnership programs between vendors and agencies. So we featured 2 stories. We mentioned 2 stories this week, DXP Report, about partnership programs. So Datto CMS, they released a recap blog article about their partner program, which they launched it a year ago. So just kind of updating their partners and potential customers about what's been going on there. And right now they have about 80 partners listed on their website. And they explain also how they help partners and how partners help them. So one of the ways they try to help their partners is by providing dedicated support through technology and sales training. And that vendors also heavily involved in the sales process when agencies are trying to educate potential customers about what a CMS is, what it does, what each one does. And Datto CMS, they mentioned that they offer support by providing live demos, Q&A sessions, validation of the architecture designed for their customers. And they mentioned also that their presence can help during this phase, and clients appreciate the close connection the agency has with our team. And On the agency side, the agencies get to showcase their work and brand, and on Datto's website, case studies and whatnot. And then everyone's be able to build relationships and share their knowledge with each other. And I think that is exactly what we just kind of mentioned in the previous topic. Like that education coming from agencies specifically about which CMS is the best option for a particular client, but then the vendor also supporting them in that process. Like, okay, cool, you've got these potential customers for us. Let's come in here and help you with these demos, get some more information about the architecture and how it fits in. And that way, it's like a symbiotic relationship between the two, and they're able to work together. And then just one more, I'll just quickly mention this before you dive in, the Storyblock partnership. So Storyblock, last year, July, they launched their 1.5 million partner fund to help partners grow and scale their businesses with Storyblock. One of the things they launched with that was a 5K fund for partners to do co-brand and other promotional marketing activities. And now they're adding a partner competition, number 2, which started on January 23rd and is running until March 23rd. And the premise behind this is they want agencies and partners to submit creative lead generation ideas to Storyblock. So it can be an email marketing campaign, paid ads, exclusive events. And the goal is to help generate more enterprise deals together. And the winner of that competition gets 10K in prize money. Yeah. So just another example.
Yeah, I think these are 2 good examples because two great platforms, Datto CMS and Storyblock. But I think these are 2 examples of like one where Datto has, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but it's definitely not bare minimum. This is like a very well thought out, and it seems like they're really prioritizing the agency's needs with this, like how they're sort of giving them support and demos, that kind of thing. That's great. But the more I see this space expand, they said they've got 80 partners on their website, right? Datto CMS.
Yeah.
I wonder how many of those 80 have multiple heads of CMS partners, right? They've got 3 or 4 maybe. How is Datto CMS making sure they're top of mind for their for that agency or for those agencies, right? If there's 3 or 4, you're kind of competing there again. Hopefully there is an element of the agency sort of trying to choose the best CMS for the customer, which I'm sure is most of the time. But no doubt, like there's going to be overlap as well, where a couple of platforms could work. How is Datto CMS sort of standing out amongst those that circle of partners? I'm not sure that this strategy is like going to make them stand out, because I'm pretty sure most head of CMS will give some sort of similar support when it comes to migration and that kind of thing, content migration. I'm pretty sure it's fairly standard across the board, although they've definitely gone the extra mile with a few of these. Yeah. I feel like Storyblock, they've tried to be innovative here, right? They've got a $1.5 million partner fund where agencies can tap into 5K of funding to produce content about Storyblock immediately, right? Like Storyblock are basically saying, hey, we will pay for you to create content that generates leads, right? Yeah. And content is about Storyblock, of course, right? So that's the difference there, right? So those agencies who are working with Storyblock, they're quite literally, marketing Storyblock. Therefore, they're going to get sort of customers who are interested in Storyblock from the get-go, and from the top, from the very beginning, Storyblook is standing out as these are going to be the go-to customer here, right? Yeah. So I think this is the difference in the strategy here is important, and I think Storyblock's got a more innovative strategy. Again, the sort of competition with a 10K prize as well. Yeah. It just sort of it tells agencies that like we're not just going to support you from a technical perspective, but we're also going to support you in getting the leads through the door, and then we'll execute together, right? Yeah. I don't think many headless CMSs are doing that. Where it's like, hey, we'll help with the content, we'll help with actual, getting the word out about your services as well as our platform, and having that sort of close relationship, not just behind the scenes, right? Because the Datto thing is like a close relationship behind the scenes, right? Once the customers come to the door, we work together, we'll demo together and this and that. That's great. But Storyblock is leading from the front and saying, hey, we'll go to market together, we'll present ourselves together. You publish content about us and how great we are, and the technical collaboration will come after that anyway. Yeah. So I feel like I admire the Storyblock strategy a lot. I think a lot of head of CMSs can imitate it or do even better than that, quite frankly. And again, as we keep saying, as this space grows, these headless CMS vendors are going to need new ways to stand out, right? New ways for the agencies to pick them rather than the next headless CMS, right?
Yeah.
Part of that is definitely education and sort of brand awareness and content marketing as well. But another big part of that is, hey, did you help us like get the lead through the door? Did you like help us with any funding in that situation, or just like expertise maybe, or like even like guest posting just to like, you know, help us sort of build our sort of sales pipeline or lead generation pipeline?
Yeah.
That feels like that's the next sort of step here, and Storybook seems to be the first to take it publicly. Anyway, I'm not saying they're the first to ever do this, but in this sort of innovative way they have. So yeah,
I think
it's all sort of the education, right?
Yeah, but I think one caveat we have to mention with the Storyblock strategy is they recently raised millions of dollars, so they do have the funding to say, okay, let's put it towards this, because any sort of company that raises money from VC funding, it's like, okay, how are you going to use our money? What are you going to do with it? We know they're like heavily expanding their teams. They're probably like, okay, this is the best way to deploy it towards marketing. But I think it is a good point that they probably could have said, okay, let's use this money for marketing and just do it ourselves. That could have just been, okay, let's hire huge internal teams of marketers and just like start just producing content and things like that. And I'm sure they've done it as well. But I think the fact that they decided, hey, let's use this to build our partnerships and then build our brand. I think that is kind of how they were able to use that funding to do that.
Yeah, and that's a good caveat, by the way. And but I'll rebut very very briefly and just say, if you are a headless CMS vendor, you don't have that big budget to put out $1 million and a half dollars as a partner fund, find new ways to support them in that same way, right? You can say, hey, we've got a marketing team. You know, instead of us publishing 6 blog posts a month on our blog, we'll dedicate 2 of those to our partners who want to collaborate with us on some content, and like maybe do some case studies together, that kind of thing. So there are ways. It doesn't need to be necessarily just like purely from a funding perspective, but there are ways to sort of go this extra mile and kind of go to market with your agencies. And this was a really really interesting one. I enjoyed this one today. Andres, thank you for your time.
No problem.